It is Wednesday, November 5th, and guys, holy freaking moly. The agenda is packed. Zoran Mandani won the mayoral race in New York City last night. And what do you know? Within a minute, he flipped into the communist we knew he was. Personally, I found this frightening to watch. If you didn't see his full victory speech, we have it. We have some of the highlights. And look, I'm hearing there is big money behind this guy, or at least big influence. So my critical question is, who's opening these doors, folks? This can't just happen in New York. Not like this. Not with somebody pushing buttons to make it possible. Albany is feeling the pressure already. What in the world is happening here? The president responded with 4 words. And so it begins. Also, we have to talk about the latest in the Supreme Court on Trump's tariffs. And it's not good news, folks. And we have more stories as well from around the country.
If anyone can show a nation betrayed by Donald Trump how to defeat him, it is the city that gave rise to him. And if there is any way to terrify a despot, it is by dismantling the very conditions that allowed him to accumulate power. This is not only how we stop Trump, it's how we stop the next one.
So, it was a big night for Democrats across the board last night, sweeping the races, albeit all of them in blue cities and states. The results themselves weren't unexpected, but in my analysis, the sheer size of the wins, the margins, were much larger than we thought. Even the race for AG in Virginia, Democrat Jay Jones won that AG race. That's the candidate who was caught wishing for the murder of conservative children. Yes, that Jay Jones won last night. The new top law enforcement officer in the state of Virginia said he wished his opponents would be killed. So, what is happening here? Let's get to New York City. Zoran Mandani beat Andrew Cuomo by more than 10 points, delivering his victory night speech and stunning viewers, scaring the living crap out of Democrats, moderate, normal Democrats who voted for him. He did this complete character swap right in front of our eyes. Dozens of Democrats are now coming out and distancing themselves from him. For months, he's been on the campaign trail, doing interviews, acting, and pitching himself as this likable, calm, measured person. Admitting he's a socialist, yes, but calling himself a democratic socialist in this schoolboy-type tone, acting very non-threatening. Well, folks, all of that changed the second he won last night. If you ask me, if you could imagine Hugo Chavez mixed with Bane from Dark Knight, that's what we saw him transform into live on stage in front of our eyes, telling New Yorkers and the country, prepare for a new age in America. One that dismantles capitalism, dismantles the system that gave rise to Donald Trump, bringing something better in its wake, where we take from the wealthy, destroy the system that allows someone to even become wealthy. The promise of America that allows someone to acquire property, resources, and power. Zoran says, no more. That's over.
And if there is any way to terrify a despot, it is by dismantling the very conditions that allowed him to accumulate power. This is not only how we stop Trump, it's how we stop the next one. So, Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up. We will hold bad landlords to account because the Donald Trumps of our city have grown far too comfortable taking advantage of their tenants. We will put an end to the culture of corruption that has allowed billionaires like Trump to evade taxation and exploit tax breaks. We will stand alongside unions and expand labor protections because we know just as Donald Trump does, that when working people have ironclad rights, the bosses who seek to extort them become very small indeed. New York will remain a city of immigrants, a city built by immigrants, powered by immigrants, and as of tonight, led by an immigrant. So hear me, President Trump, when I say this. To get to any of us, you will have to get through all of us.
Scary stuff, folks. But here's the critical question. How does this agenda get pushed? Albany is already feeling the pressure to cave and adjust their platform to allow Zoran's agenda. Look, none of what he's promising can happen without Albany on board, without the governor changing her platform to raise taxes. Well, somehow that's now on the table. In what world does a mayor influence the governor of a state? Here's what's really going on. Money and power, folks. Somebody is making this possible. Somebody's opening doors for this guy. Last night, Alex Soros, the heir apparent to George Soros' empire, posted on X with him last night, writing, "So proud to be a New Yorker. The American dream continues. Congrats to the next mayor. And now that Zoran won, once he becomes mayor next month or in January, I have to ask, who do you think will be moving to New York City? We know all the people who are going to be leaving, fleeing the city. But who will be moving into New York? Not the job creators, not business owners, not investors. Let me know what you think. Will this just reinforce a socialist New York? I think probably. And here's another part of my analysis, a stunning fact from the exit polls last night. 48% of voters who were born in New York City voted for Cuomo and SWA. 48% of the native New Yorkers voted against Zoran. The people who won him the election last night weren't even real New Yorkers. This is what happens when you have uncontrolled migration. They've diluted your vote, your voice. That's what happens when you import new people. Native Americans lose out. President Trump responded with 4 words last night. And so it begins. Trump is already promising to arrest Zoran Mandani if he interferes with ICE.
Your beloved New York City may well be led by a communist soon, Zoran Mandani, who in his nomination speech said he will defy ICE and will not allow ICE to arrest criminal aliens in New York City. Your message to communist Zoran Mandani?
Well, then we'll have to arrest him. Look, we don't need a communist in this country, but if we have one, I'm going to be watching over him very carefully on behalf of the nation. We send him money. We send him all the things that he needs to run a government. And by the way, they get about 3 times what you get, Ron. If you
Look, in my opinion, the point of last night is that Republicans must take this seriously, deadly seriously. Mandani winning should be flashing this big, fat red light that young people aren't satisfied with where they are economically. Young people are willing to move in radical directions politically to fix their lives economically, even if that means voting for someone who is the antithesis of what it means to be American.
Through those words, I think you're saying that no, the president doesn't have inherent authority over tariffs in peacetime.
Absolutely. We do not assert that. We say that Congress can delegate that to him, and when Congress does so, as it does when it uses the phrase regulate importation.
I follow all of that.
I agree.
Okay. You emphasize that Congress can always take back its powers. You mentioned that a couple of times. But don't we have a serious retrieval problem here? Because once Congress delegates by a bare majority and the president signs it, and of course every president will sign a law that gives him more authority, Congress can't take that back without a supermajority. And even then, it's going to be veto-proof. What president's ever going to give that power back? Pretty rare president. So how should that inform our view of delegations and major questions.
I would look at the balance that Congress struck, because what Congress did initially, it had a 2-house legislative veto.
And we struck that down.
Yeah. And then Congress went back to the statute and amended it. Yeah. It took out the legislative veto and left in the joint resolution, but still left the president with all those powers.
That's what Congress did?
Yes.
Fair enough. As a practical matter, in the real world, it can never get that power back.
I disagree, because in January 2023, Congress voted to terminate one of the biggest IEEPA emergencies ever, the COVID emergency, and the president went along with that. So what the statute reflects is there's going to be the ability for a sort of political consensus against a declared emergency.
Well, what happens when the president simply vetoes legislation to try to take these powers back?
Well, he has the authority to veto legislation to terminate a national emergency, for example. I mean, he retains the powers in the background because IEEPA is still on the books. But if he declares an emergency and Congress doesn't like it and passes a joint resolution, yes, he can absolutely veto that.
Yeah, so Congress, as a practical matter, can't get this power back once it's handed it over to the president. It's a one-way ratchet toward the gradual but continual accretion of power in the executive branch and away from the people's elected representatives.
I disagree with that, and the recent historical counterexample of Congress's termination of the COVID emergency demonstrates that the political oversight
with the president's assent
is meaningful.
And the data supports this analysis. U.S. household debt, for instance, last month hit a record $18.6 trillion as student loan defaults explode. And it's not just student loans that are blowing up. The delinquency rate for credit cards just jumped through the roof to 12.41%. That's the highest delinquency rate since 2011. The median age for first-time homebuyers in this country is currently sitting at 40 years old, a record high. Back in the 80s, the typical first-time homebuyer was in their mid to late 20s. President Trump is obviously working on solving these problems, pushing for lower rates, inflicting the largest tariff regime in 100 years to reshore manufacturing. But that takes time. It's only been 9 months. Unfortunately for Trump and for Republicans, young people want immediate satisfaction. Now, let's move on to the other big story. While this is happening, President Trump is facing more bad news economically. The U.S. Supreme Court today is hearing arguments in Trump's IEEPA tariff case, which concerns Trump's legal authority to invoke these sweeping unilateral tariffs. And I'm telling you, folks, Polymarket has the odds of the Supreme Court siding with Trump over tariffs tumbling today to only 23%, meaning we could be about to witness the biggest blunder of Trump's second term if the court rules against Trump's use of APA. Again, that's Trump's legal basis for invoking unilateral tariffs against virtually every country in the world. The big question is, does the president have that unilateral authority? This means Trump's entire economic agenda is in question. Plus, the clawbacks on the hundreds of billions in tariff revenues that Treasuries collected need to be returned, refunded, sent back. Conservative Justices Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, and Amy Coney Barrett are asking tough questions during oral arguments. Gorsuch even hammered Solicitor General Sauer over separation of powers. Just listen to this and tell me if this sounds good or not. Watch through those words. Now, I'm hearing the Trump team does have a plan B if things don't go their way. For months, they've been weighing using other laws as contingency plans to replace these IEEPA tariffs if they do lose in court. This includes deploying a never-before-used provision in the Trade Act of 1974, Section 122, which allows for tariffs of up to 15% for 150 days to address trade imbalances with other countries. Doing that would at least buy some time for the president to figure out individualized tariffs for each major trading partner under a different provision of that same law, Section 301, which is used to counter unfair foreign trade practices. All of this, though, is up in the air right now. And in my opinion, it's why Trump needs a win, a big win, and soon. All right, that wraps up this episode. I'm waiting for you all in the comments. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.